You and Joe Cornish have a partnership that goes back a quarter of a century. How did it begin?
Wow. God, you're talking in very big historical terms there, quarter of a century. And anyway, let's see. It was a quarter of a century, though. We met at school when we were about 13 or something, and bonded over John Hughes movies and bad music and some good music. Thompson Twins, Thomas Dolby, Orange Juice. I'm not going to tell you which are the good bands and the bad bands there. You have to figure it out for yourself. And so we liked all that kind of thing. You know, we were big mainstream pop culture fans, and slightly at odds with everybody else at that school who were into Ex-Mal Deutschland and The Cult and Jesus and Mary Chain. They were ostensibly the cool people, and we were the silly twats. But, you know, we had a really good time just being silly twats and talking about movies and fantasizing about making movies and watching a fuck of a lot of films and nicking posters from the underground stations, which I wouldn't encourage anyone to do. And so, yeah, that was the foundation for our friendship, really. And we always made videos, you know. And so eventually, after Joe went to film school, I went to art school, and when, you know, we carried on hanging out and making videos in that time, and I sent some of them off to a TV station while I was at art school, as well as some of my own bollocks. And they got back in touch with me, and I got a job hosting a sort of weird public access show in the UK called Takeover TV, and then got Joe involved, and as they say, the rest, as they say, is history.
There seem to have been a few other notable people, like Louis Theroux, that you became friends with at school. Do talented people have a tendency to pop up in groups, do you think?
Well, that's very flattering of you to imply that we are some kind of talented group. I would say Louis is definitely talented. I always knew that he was going to do well for himself. I was always jealous of him, you know. I just thought, fucking Louis, he's sorted, he's going to be fine, whatever he does. What am I going to do? I've got no formal skills whatsoever. So I didn't feel like we were a talented group. I felt like we were good friends and had fun together, but I was worried for my future. But to answer your question, I don't know. I think if there's a few interesting people like Louis and, well, like Joe, you know, and there was a few other interesting people around, then you all start feeding off each other, don't you? And trying each other's ideas on for size. And
how much do you think you've all influenced each other? I mean, you can sort of see, like, even in just mannerisms and stuff.
Yeah.
You and Louis and Joe all sort of have little tics and things that seem to be very similar.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely. A lot, I would say. I mean, I'm sort of naturally a kind of, you know, I like imitating things and trying things out. And so I do end up Zelig-like, kind of absorbing a lot of things that are around me, a lot of influences and personality traits and things like that, especially from people I admire. And so, yeah, I would say a lot. Certainly I was influenced a lot. And you know, I would hope that Joe would say that he was too. If he doesn't, he's a fucking liar.
Listening to the Adam and Joe podcast, you slip in and out of different characters all the time. Does that come naturally, or is it something you have to work on?
It sort of comes naturally on the radio show because it's just enjoyable to shout and talk rubbish. And I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's not much current affairs chat on the programme. So it's really, you know, it's just a non-stop stream of nonsense, isn't it? And I love funny voices. I really like just weird accents. One of my first most enjoyable funny things at the movies was Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber, doing that weird British accent that he does. You know, I like it. I like you a lot. And I just thought, fucking hell, that was so funny. No, I hadn't heard anyone doing something that weird before. Like if someone did an accent, it was a sort of funny French accent or something, but someone just mangling the way someone speaks in that way, I hadn't really seen him before, and I really thought it was funny. And then, people like the League of Gentlemen, I really loved their show when it came out, and all the funny voices they used to do, and all the characters they had. I thought they were just brilliant. And then, I always liked doing funny voices, but I naturally gravitate towards those sort of things. Very influenced by the League and the Mighty Boosh and people like that.
Okay, well, can you describe some more of the comedians and artists that have influenced you over the years?
God, well, Bowie's the sort of backbone to everything for me, really. And we all grew up listening to him and liking him and taking the piss out of him a little bit as well, It all comes back to Bowie, really. He's like the route map for everything good in my cultural sphere. It all shoots off, It's like I started listening to Bowie and then got into Eno and Roxy Music and Lou Reed and Velvet Underground and then Philip Glass and all those people and Talking Heads and all kind of sparking off Bowie, really, and then watching his movies, the good and the bad movies, and talking in Bowie accents, which we used to do. We used to sit around, me and Louis and Joe, and just pretend to be David Bowie for very long periods of time and just go, wizard. So Bowie, he's a big influence. Not that you'd know. But comedians, so many, I'm just a fan of a lot of stuff. I'm watching a lot of Community at the moment. Have you ever seen that? That's a good show. And, I really love, so much. I'm trying to think of the more recent stuff.
Do you think you'll ever get the real David Bowie to say, I was on your show?
No, I don't think so. I think part of the reason I love him is because he's too cool for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he's
Would you meet him if you had the chance?
Yeah, definitely. But I don't think I would. And I think it would probably... I've thought about it a lot. And I've got close once or twice, very close. But I think I would cry. I really genuinely think I would cry if I met him.
He did, of course. He did do that thing on Extras.
He did. That was a very...
It's not that cool.
No, that was hard to watch, I must say. Because one of the first times that we were close to him was... there's Jonathan Ross?
Yeah.
So Jonathan was we were friendly with Jonathan, and he took us to see Bowie playing at Maida Vale Studios for the BBC in London. Bowie was doing a small gig, and Ricky Gervais came along, and Ricky was Jonathan's new friend kind of thing. He'd just done The Office, and Ricky was a big Bowie fan. So and Bowie had seen The Office, and it was just all beginning to take off with The Office, and so Bowie just zeroed in on Ricky and started chatting, and me and Joe were just like, you bugger. And then they sort of became pals, and then Bowie turned up on Extras, and I couldn't believe it. It was like seeing the sexiest girl at school that you always loved going out with just
cool, cool pants.
One of the jocks who just beat you up.
Is Ricky Gervais that bad?
No, he's just more successful than I am, so that's how it feels.
Fair enough. You and Joe occasionally tease us Australians, for example, with that. Oh, mate. I'm gonna go to England to find Adam and Joe. Do British people really see us that way?
Do they?
Do they really see us that way? Are we kind of dumb, violent crazies?
Well, yes and no. I think, Australians are funny to imitate, and it's nice. It's an enjoyable accent to do, And most Brits grew up watching Neighbours, of my generation anyway. So that was a source of amusement. It just seemed like a land full of silly people, if all you know about it is Neighbours. And then you get, the prime cultural exports for my generation were people like Paul Hogan and Kylie, and you sort of form your opinions on that basis. And I like Paul Hogan and Kylie's all right, I suppose. But yeah, you know, they're funny, and then a lot of the Australians that come to the UK are different type of Australians, I suppose, aren't there? I mean, I'm just trying to think what's my point? What is my point? Oh yeah, you know, it's like people take the piss out of them, like anyone. You know, you take the piss out of. I'm sure you guys take the piss out of Brits as well. But then when it comes down to it, I think most Brits have quite a deep affection for Australia. And, you know, if you actually ask anyone who's been there, as I did the other day, to some of my friends, they were like, well, you know, my friend said, yeah, it's the promised land. You know, he said, it's lovely. It's just what life should be like out there. And people behave the way they ought to behave. And he said, you know, obviously there's some kind of like caricatures, shrimp on the barbie, beer drinking.
Have you heard Stuart Lee talk about massive prawns?
Yes, that's right. Well, he's got, as Joe says, a lot of bees in his bonnet, Stuart Lee. He also rails against country life, which I enjoy very
rails
much
against
myself.
pretty much everything.
He does, yeah.
Which, I mean, you manage to be very funny without being overly snarky or cruel. How do you manage that? Do you think it's quite rare?
Well, that's nice of you to say, but well, I think it's partly because I don't like that kind of thing myself to listen to. You know, I think it's sort of funny in small doses, being cruel and snarky, that is. And everyone's got a bit in them, but it's just, yeah, it's all in moderation, you know. And you've got to try and see the best in things, don't you? And it's hard because I think Joe and I are quite highly critical about lots of things, really, like anyone else, because we care about it, you know. And when you care about something, when you care about movies or music or whatever, then you do get very critical. But it's just a bit wearisome to only hear that the whole time, you know, from people. So we try our best to, you know, if you can't say something nice, then say something very stupid in a French accent. That's my philosophy.
Your TV programs, I don't think, have ever been shown in Australia, but judging from social media and ticket sales, there's plenty of people here who know about you. Do you know how many people listen to the podcast in Australia, or do you get a lot of emails from Australians?
We did, yeah. We got lots of emails from Australians, and it was really surprising. I sort of assumed that it was expat Brits that were listening. I don't know. You can tell me if it's Australians. I mean, I guess it's mainly Brits, isn't it? But you're Australian, right? You were born in this country.
Well, I grew up in England. So
did you? Okay.
Slightly changes things.
Yeah. Well, maybe you've got it in your genes then, because it is very British humour, and I would be surprised if people abroad got to grips with it. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny what you were saying earlier about Brits having a deep affection for Australians. From what especially people my age, seem to have totally a huge affection for Brits and especially British comedy. So
right.
You never know.
Well, you know, I mean, I guess we are all fundamentally part of the Commonwealth and joined at the hip in lots of ways. That's why it's fun to tease each other, I suppose. But yeah, you know, I mean...
It's not like we're New Zealanders either.
Well, again, that's all the funniest... Like, I was thinking I might show a video by Lonely Island, you know them. Threw It on the Ground. Have you seen that one? Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if I'll show it because it's... I'm sure lots of people have seen it. But it sort of struck me that you know, the kings of the musical comedy genre are basically from this part of the world. Tim Minchin and the Concords and people like that, you know. Even Conan Moccasin has got like... there's something funny about him, isn't there?
I actually haven't heard of Conan Moccasin, but he has a funny name.
He's a New Zealander, but he's quite good. Conan, Connan.
Conan Moccasin.
And moccasin as in moccasins.
Yeah.
And he's a bit like kind of Syd Barrett meets Flight of the Conchords or something. He's good. Anyway, what was my point? Oh yeah. So I've no idea. I'm never sure about the podcast. It's a weird thing. Like you. I mean, I think I get recognised and spoken to because of the podcast more than anything else I've ever done, you know. which always seems weird to me. Like,
it's the one thing you do where you can't see your face.
Yeah, yeah.